Red here. Today's video is about unpacking grief. And grief to me is not a linear trajectory. A lot of people think that when you are grieving, it's uphill, but really it's like a roller coaster. It's like waves. There are points where it's very high and some very, very low points. And I think understanding that allows us to give ourselves the grace and space to grieve on our own timeline, because each person's timeline is unique and subjective to their circumstances. So my dad, irhamu, passed on May 4th, 2008. And although it's been so many years, he passed away when I was 10 years old due to a brain tumor. And his passing was very instrumental into how I see the world, how I interact with people, and just it comes with a lot of like unpacked emotions, especially when you lose a father figure at such a young age. So before I kind of continue on with this video, I want to take a moment to ask y'all to make sincere dua for my dad, irhamu Bashir Abdul Habib. And I ask that, he's accepted to the highest level of Jannah. I ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala welcomes him and he drinks from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's hands. And anyone who has lost someone recently or a long time ago, I ask that Allah accepts them all to the highest level of Jannah, and may we be reunited with them. Allahumma ameen. When you lose someone at such a young age or a parental figure, it comes with a lot of baggage. It comes with a lot of things in which that you have to work through throughout your life, and it's very difficult emotions to walk through. So I'm kind of hoping that I get to share a little bit of my journey and what that looked like for me. The most common emotions that I've experienced throughout my whole life was feelings of shame. And I don't know why, and feelings of shame and abandonment. And although my dad didn't leave me, he just passed away, irhamu, I still had feelings of abandonment associated with it. But I think the shame is what played a very crucial role in the way that I was growing up and how I acted as a child. The way I had processed things as a child was to try to seem normal, try to act like I had a two-parent household, try to act like my dad was working regularly, and just like things like that. So in small talk, my goal has always been to like just act like he was alive, and I would say like whatever job that he had at the time when he immigrated to the United States. And that was my way of avoiding difficult conversations. I think one of the things that I hated the most about those small talks, or when people asked about my father, it's the pity look afterwards, or it's the sudden sadness that comes into that conversation, even though it's unintended for it to be sad. And then it's just awkward for the both of us, because it's like, I can't tell you like, ooh, it was such an easy experience. No, we can't really move on in that way. It's a very real and difficult experience on its own. In addition to that, like the way that my shame presented itself is that I wouldn't post like on his anniversary. I would try to avoid conversation that had to do anything with parents, because it was always such a difficult conversation. And I spent a majority of my life operating in that way. And what was nice in that, I was based in Arizona my whole life, so people already knew my story. People knew the challenges that me and my family had to explain. So I didn't really have to explain that to other people. It wasn't until like my early 20s when I started meeting new people in my life, and I was like, oh shoot, how am I going to tell them about my dead dad? I genuinely think about that. I think about how that's going to come up in conversations. How can I bring it up in a way that's casual, in a way where I don't have to spill my life secrets? Like, I just want it to be a passing conversation, and we don't even have to focus too much on it, because not everybody is deserving of that deep-rooted understanding of you, and sometimes you just want it to be known as a fact. At age 23, where I was like, girl, you can't be living like this. You can't be living in this sense of shame. You can't hide away from a very real aspect of your life. I remember visiting my friend's house, and we were all kind of sitting with his parents, and his father had asked me a question like, hey, like, what does your dad do? And the way my heart sunk in that moment, I was like, ooh. The conversation was going really great. We were positive. We were drinking chai. Like, it was like a smooth conversation. And then I was like, in my attempt to kind of like minimize the minimize the effects of that question. I was like, oh yeah, my dad passed away a long time ago, irhamu. Like, I tried to make it seem like, oh yeah, this happened, minimize, it's not a big deal in my life anymore. But you could tell in that moment the whole conversation shift. But thankfully, his father had so much emotional intelligence and just like asked me questions after about my brother and my mom. And I remember instantly after that experience, I ran to my mom and I was like, oh me, I need your help, because mashallah, my mom does not fear of sharing her story as a widow or about losing her husband early on. She does it with so much like pride and courage, and like, you know, she's really has no shame in the end. Very different than how I was as a kid or how I operated. So I was like, sis, I need you to tell me exactly what to say if this comes up again, because I don't want to be embarrassed or I don't want to feel awkward. And yeah, these are the things that spiral in my head, and I'm sure maybe other people may feel the same way. But I'm sharing her advice because I know it's going to benefit y'all, because it benefited me so much. But she said, in conversation, like, take a moment, like, be like, oh yeah, my dad, Allah yarhamu, passed away like a while back, but my mom and my brothers are still alive. And like, just kind of like continue on the conversation. Like, don't pause, don't be like, my dad passed away, period. You know what I mean? So I really needed that advice. Maybe this is just like a thing for people who lost their parents at a young age, I don't know. But if this is something that you deal with too, let me know so I know I'm not alone. So after that experience, I wanted to be more intentional. But in general, my year when I turned 23, I said I wanted to embrace my dad's passing. I wanted to grieve out loud instead of silence. So I posted a post, and I'm gonna bring it up here. But I posted a post like honoring my dad and talking about the strength of like grief and like expressing like emotions of sadness, emotions of pain. And that was so freeing for me for a couple of reasons, because one, I didn't have to have that difficult conversation with my friends that were new to my life. And two, it was just like, wow, like I was holding this on my chest for 13 years at that time. And it was just so freeing. And I'm so grateful that I was able to do that. So when I first lost my father, Allah yarhamu, the tools and resources for a 10-year-old are not that much. But I really found myself lost in music. I would listen to a lot of songs, and one of the songs that just like always like helped me was Mariah Carey's Bye Bye, where she would say, this is for my people who just lost somebody, your best friend, your baby, your man. Or anyway, I don't remember the lyrics, but that song, like I would listen to it and it was just, I don't know why, it's nice how like grief is not something that you do alone. You do it kind of in community. And like, even though like some of you may not be grieving my dad, you may have not even met him or known him, but we have that shared human experience that we've all lost somebody at some point in our life. So that was one of the things I did. I lost myself in music. Another thing that helped me was talking to friends who had similar experiences, either losing a mother or a father also at a young age or even at an older age. And those conversations were very much healing, because you can't really explain what that experience is like. You just kind of have to live through it to understand everything that is encompassed around it. And the third thing that was really powerful, third and fourth, the third thing that was really powerful for me was just making dua constantly. Any moment I would feel sad or I'm on the brink of tears, I used it as a moment to strengthen my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but really make a sincere dua for my dad. And like, dua is just making me feel like more connected, feel like, you know, I'm kind of in a way like still helping my dad, not in this life, but inshallah in the next life. And the fourth thing that I love to do now is going to the graveyard. As a kid, I avoided that because it's always like, oh my god, back to reality. I was out here acting like my dad's alive, and now I have to look at his grave and realize like, oh, he's gone, you know what I mean? But now I go to the graveyard and it's more of a testament of a reminder that this life is not forever. And as Muslims, we believe in a second life, and inshallah we will be reunited in the second life. So really visiting the graveyard just kind of like grounds me and like reminds me that this experience was very much real, and you know, whatever pain that I'm feeling is real and it's okay. But for the longest time, I just associated grief as this painful, sad thing that you must do in silence, or that you must kind of overcome it in some way or replace those terrible memories with good ones. And that was the challenge that I had with myself, is because I identify myself as a positive person. I work on being positive on my day-to-day life, but I have these moments in which I'm grieving, or moments of deep sadness that made me kind of like conflict my understanding of myself and who I'm trying to be, and then with my reality of my life. So it wasn't until my grandma Bell Hooks, irhamu, I love her so much, and I love her book all about love, but there was a specific quote, and I'm gonna read it. I can't even read my handwriting. She says, "Possessing the courage to claim our grief as an expression of love's passion." So that quote, and she had so many other quotes in that book that were just gems about grief that I needed to read, and I needed to dive deeper into them. But her saying that our grief is a passion of our love, or it's an element or an expression of our love, that empowered me, because it's like, I felt like when I was grieving, I'm not really like reminiscing on the sad, on the happy things. I was just reminiscing of the sad things and missing like my father, irhamu. But that quote really inspired me to think about grief in a different way, and that it is expression of love. And as we grieve, or as we see other people grieve and experience their own grievances in their life, know that this is them showing love. And we show love in so many different ways, and that's one thing that I'm working on implementing in my life, is like, how can I keep my dad's like memory alive in a way that, you know, brings peace to myself. And for me, making this video does that. That Instagram post, just writing emotions, it's just, with losing a father at such a young age, I don't have necessarily specific memories that are associated with it, and I get so jealous of people that have videos or photos of their parents, that and audio and recordings that they could look back, because it helps like reinstill those memories. So even if it's not like with your parent that you lost, it could be a grandparent, aunt, whoever it may be, someone else that you dearly love, look at those photos and cherish them. And I know people who have made scrapbooks, they made art pieces. My brother did this thing on Facebook where you take an animated photo and you make it into like, or sorry, you take a regular 2D photo and Facebook makes it like an animated photo for you. So just these type of things, and like these creative pieces, maybe writing a poem or just writing about your emotions, allow you to, you know, turn that grief and help you get some sense of peace, but also process your emotions better. Because if you're like me and you kind of choose to avoid those uncomfortable emotions, and you choose to, you know, you choose to act like you're okay when you're not, it tends to have a long-term damage, and it takes harder to process later. So I encourage you all to look at your grief as an expression of love, and give yourself grace as you process through these difficult emotions, and know that at some moments it's going to be hard, especially around the holidays, around celebrations, around monumental moments in your life, like maybe your graduation, maybe it's your wedding, maybe, you know, wow. I was trying not to tear up in this video, because that's why I purposefully took notes prior, because I wanted to have my thoughts like gathered. But yeah, thinking about those big moments in our life, and thinking about the person that we loved, our fathers, maybe it's our mothers, maybe it's our aunts, maybe it's our brothers, sisters, grandparents, whoever it is, and thinking that they won't necessarily be there for that, that can be difficult at times. And know that it's okay. Know that it's okay for it to be difficult, and that you're not alone in these emotions. You're not the only one that thinks about the future, or thinks about the celebrations and the holidays and those huge moments, but know that we are grieving in community. Me and you are grieving, and that you're not alone. So I want to conclude this video of what I started out with, is that grief is not linear. it comes in waves, it comes in a coaster ride. And some moments are going to be high, some moments are going to be low, and there is absolutely no timeline because that is subjective to you and your experience and how you heal. But as long as you look at your grief in an angle of courage and not associated with shame, you'll be able to see your grief as an expression of love. And I hope that you really enjoyed this video today. I hope it kind of allowed you space to grieve or grieve together and normalize that we have dead parents and that is a part of life, or normalize that, you know, that losing someone is not easy. And if it's not a parent, like grandparents hold that much weight too, our siblings, our aunts, or our friends, or whoever it is. But because grief is a part of life and we're all gonna experience it, there's also beauty in that too, in that we're not alone. And I hope through this video you realize that too.